Dad, I need $15,000. Tonight. That was how my daughter greeted me. No hello. No how are you. Just a demand thrown across my kitchen like it was nothing. She hadn't even taken off her coat. I didn't look at her. I kept rinsing the dinner plate in my hands, letting the warm water run over my fingers. Silence had always been my best armor. I'm serious, she pressed. My birthday party is tomorrow. Darren's clients will be there. My coworkers, the neighbors. I can't embarrass myself. She dropped her handbag on the table like a final verdict. I turned around slowly, dish towel in hand. Rachel, I said, you're 40 years old. It's time to stop pretending you're still someone's daughter who needs saving. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. You're unbelievable. You sit on all that money while I'm out there trying to build something. No, I said calmly. You're trying to impress people who don't care about you. That's different. She started circling the kitchen, pacing like she always did when her act was falling apart. You live in this tiny house, drive a junk car, shop at discount stores, and I'm the one struggling. I didn't reply. The photos on the fridge caught my eye. Family memories, smiles from another time, when money hadn't poisoned every conversation. You remember the earrings? I asked quietly. You said your car broke down. I gave you $3,000. You bought jewelry. That was years ago, she snapped. Let it go. The investment with Darren. You said it would double in 6 months. I gave you $8,000. You spent it at Nordstrom. She slammed her hand on the table. I'm your only daughter. You owe me this. No, I said, standing up. I don't. I pointed to the door. She stared at me like she couldn't believe I'd actually said it. Then she turned, grabbed her bag, and stormed out. The slam of the front door echoed through the house long after her car disappeared. That night, I sat alone in my recliner, glass of whiskey in hand, Clara's bottle, her favorite, the one she only opened on holidays. She'd been gone 4 years now, but I still talked to her picture like she was right there beside me. You were right, I muttered. I should have stopped helping her years ago. But fatherhood doesn't come with an off switch. The next morning, I woke early, poured my coffee into a travel mug, and stepped out into the crisp April air. I never made it to the grocery store. All 4 tires on my car had been slashed. Perfect cuts. Precise. Not an accident. Not bad luck. Someone wanted me stuck. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about a birthday party. It never was. This was a setup, and it had just begun. I crouched next to my front tire, tracing the sharp slice in the rubber with my finger. It was deliberate, clean, no nails, no rough edges, just a straight cut, like someone had taken a box cutter and carved through the side wall. I stood up slowly, taking in the rest of the damage. All 4 tires. The same exact wound. This wasn't vandalism. It was preparation. And there was only one person who'd stormed out of my driveway the night before, angry enough to do it. Still, I called Rachel. She answered with a groggy voice, pretending to be half asleep. "Dad, what's wrong? It's so early." I didn't waste time. When you left last night, did you notice anything strange about my car? A pause. Then, no. What happened? All 4 tires were slashed. Another pause. Longer this time. When she finally responded, her voice had a false edge of concern. "Oh no, that's awful. Probably some kids from Maple Street. You know how they are these days." Her casual tone told me everything I needed to know. "They're clean cuts," I said flatly. "Professional. You're being paranoid," she replied, almost laughing. "Teenagers can find anything on YouTube. You always expect the worst in people." I didn't argue. There was no point. I hung up and called Teput-Oy. 2-hour wait. I sat on the porch steps, coffee in hand, watching the world move on without me. Joggers passed. Lawn mowers hummed in the distance. Normal Friday morning things. But for me, nothing felt normal anymore. That afternoon, I walked 6 miles across St. Paul grocery store, pharmacy, bank, just me, my list, and a growing sense that something much bigger was being set in motion. By the time I got home, the new tires had been installed. $637, paid in full. I had just finished putting the milk in the fridge when my phone rang. Rachel again. "Hi, Dad? How was your day?" Her tone was bright, too bright. "Long," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Had to walk everywhere." "Oh, right. The tire thing. Did you get it sorted?" 4 new tires. Not cheap. She hesitated. "Well, about tomorrow night. You're still invited. I'd really love for you to be there." I paused. "I thought you needed 15,000 to make that happen." Darren came through. He got a bonus. Big client deal, just closed. Commission check cleared. It was rehearsed. Smooth, too smooth. I grabbed a pen and scribbled the words bonus and commission on the back of a receipt. What project? The Riverside development. You know, the commercial one. I didn't know. Neither did she. But I kept listening. "This party means a lot to me," she added, softening her tone. "I know we haven't always agreed, but you're still my dad. It wouldn't feel right without you there. I could hear the manipulation buried under the sweetness. I'd heard it all my life, starting when she was 15 and wanted a new car just to get to school. Still, I said, "I'll be there." "Thank you," she said quickly. 7 o'clock. Dress nice. It's going to be elegant. After she hung up, I folded the receipt and slid it into my wallet. Bonus, commission, Riverside Development. All lies, but well-constructed ones. I walked over to the fridge, looked at the calendar Clara had bought from the local hardware store years ago. Her handwriting was gone, but mine remained. Rachel's birthday was circled in red ink. That circle felt like a noose now. I touched the date lightly, then turned away. Tomorrow, I would show up, but not as the man they expected, as the man they'd underestimated. Saturday evening came faster than expected. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting my tie. The navy suit felt stiff, like it belonged to someone else. I hadn't worn it since Clara's memorial service. Tonight, I added a pocket square, not for style, for armor. I'd even bought a gift that morning, a silver picture frame for family photos. Simple, thoughtful, harmless. Wrapped it neatly, tied the ribbon twice. The taxi pulled up at exactly 700. I stepped out onto Rachel's block, gift in hand, and froze. This wasn't a birthday party. It was a production. The backyard had been transformed into something out of a lifestyle magazine. White tents, string lights, jazz trio playing under a rented canopy. Waiters in vests served hors d'oeuvres off silver trays. A bar near the hedges was fully stocked with bottles I recognized as top shelf. Not even the cheap versions. There were even ice sculptures. My daughter didn't throw a party. She staged a statement. I walked through the side gate, my shoes sinking slightly into the manicured lawn. Guests milled about in cocktail attire. Laughter floated above the soft music. Everyone looked impressed, but confused, like they couldn't decide if they were at a fundraiser or a wedding. Rachel spotted me instantly. "Dad." She glided over in a sequined dress that shimmered with every step. "You made it. You look amazing." She kissed my cheek and immediately turned me toward the bar. The grip on my arm was gentle but firm. "This is incredible," I said, scanning the scene. Darren's bonus really stretched. She laughed lightly. "You'd be surprised how far a commission can go." I didn't answer. I just watched Darren across the yard, surrounded by 3 men in suits, telling some animated story with wide gestures. Every few seconds, his eyes darted up toward the house, toward the second-floor window. Something about that bothered me. "What'll you have to drink, sir?" the bartender asked. Rachel answered for me. "Manhattan." heavy on the rye. The bartender nodded. No hesitation, no menu, just muscle memory. He handed me a crystal glass filled too full. I took a slow sip. It was excellent, expensive, dangerous. Quite the event, I said, watching the bartender. Yes, ma'am was very specific, he replied, especially about drink counts. She wants to make sure everyone's enjoying themselves, but not too much. His smile was polite. His message wasn't, that drink wasn't hospitality. It was strategy. I began scanning the guests. Most I recognized Rachel's co-workers, a few neighbors, some clients, but there were others, too polished, too quiet. They didn't mingle. They watched, especially me. Then I felt a tug on my jacket. "Grandpa," Eli whispered. He stood beside me in an oversized suit, looking nervous. "Hey there," I said, bending slightly. "Nice suit. Listen, you need to leave. Right now." The look in his eyes, panic, urgency cut through the music. What, why? I can't explain. Just trust me. Go. Please. I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, Rachel appeared beside us. "What are you two whispering about?" Her voice was cheerful. Her eyes weren't. "Just talking about the car tires." Eli said quickly, "Grandpa's all fixed now." "Perfect," she said, her hand landing on my arm again. "Come meet the Hendersons." She steered me away before I could ask another word. But I looked back, and what I saw in Eli's face wasn't fear. It was guilt. By 10:30, I'd been offered 3 more drinks, each one stronger than the last, each one recommended by either Rachel or Darren. I accepted them all, but I didn't drink them. I let the glasses linger in my hand, took tiny sips, poured a bit into nearby potted plants when no one was watching. They thought they were lowering my defenses. What they didn't know was mine had been up since Thursday night. Every time I drifted near the gate, one of them appeared. Darren with small talk, Rachel with photo ops. They hovered like hawks, all smiles and champagne, trying to keep me exactly where they needed me. And I finally understood why. They weren't just showing off their success. They were executing something, a plan. At 10:45, I stood up from the table and quietly announced I was ready to leave. The reaction was instant. "Wait, Dad," Rachel said, blocking my path. "We haven't even cut the cake." "Come on." "Harold," Darren added, suddenly by my side. It's still early. The timing, the positioning, the desperation. It wasn't casual. It was rehearsed. I played along. "All right," I said with a smile. "I'll stay a bit longer." They relaxed, just slightly. And that was my opening. 5 minutes later, the Hendersons, an elderly couple from down the street, approached Rachel to say goodnight. She couldn't ignore them. Darren followed to help walk them out. I slipped away while they were distracted, out through the front yard. No dramatic exit, just a quiet retreat. As I walked down the sidewalk, I opened my phone and called a taxi. 3-minute wait. I stood under a street lamp, listening to the faint jazz from the backyard. Then the front door slammed behind me. I didn't turn around. From the rearview mirror, I saw Rachel appear on the porch. She scanned the street in disbelief. Her expression wasn't sad. It was panic. "Eli," I whispered into the phone a few minutes later. "Are you safe?" His voice came in low. "Grandpa, you left." "Yes." "What's going on?" He hesitated. I could hear his breathing. "They were trying to get you drunk. There are papers upstairs. Lawyers. Mom said once you were out of it, they'd bring them down and have you sign everything." "What kind of papers?" "They were talking about transferring your company. The whole thing. Darren owes money to people. They needed your signature before Monday." I stared out the window at the quiet neighborhoods sliding past. How long had this been in motion? "How do you know all this?" "I heard them last night. I couldn't sleep. I wasn't supposed to hear it." My throat tightened. "You did the right thing telling me. I was scared," he said. "I thought they'd find out. They won't. I promise. But Eli, I need to ask one more thing." "Okay. Do you know where the documents are?" "They're in the upstairs office. Top drawer. The ones with your company name on the folder." I closed my eyes. Whitaker Holdings. My life's work. My legacy. And they'd tried to steal it from me with music, whiskey, and fake smiles. That was the moment I stopped feeling confused, stopped feeling hurt, and started preparing for war. By the time I stepped into my house that night, the suit felt like armor. I was ready to shed. I hung it carefully in the closet, pulled on an old sweater, and sat down at my desk, not as a retired father, as the man who built Whitaker Holdings from a single duplex into a portfolio spanning 3 states. I gave myself 10 minutes to feel everything. The betrayal, the humiliation, the anger I'd buried for years. Then I picked up a pen and wrote one word at the top of a yellow legal pad. Facts. I listed the timeline. Thursday, Rachel storms out after I refuse her $15,000. Friday, all 4 tires slashed. Saturday, elaborate party, excessive drinking. Eli's warning. Legal documents hidden upstairs. They'd planned to take everything I spent 40 years building on a weekend while smiling in my face. And now they were going to lose everything. By 12:30 a.m., I had the safe open. Inside were decades of files, contracts, bank statements, signed development deals. I pulled out 3 folders marked with Darren's name. At first glance, they seemed clean, but Clara always told me to follow the routing numbers. And she was right. One by one, I traced inconsistencies, inflated expenses, misreported supplier invoices, missing client signatures. Projects I'd let Darren oversee out of family loyalty were filled with red flags I'd ignored. Because I trusted him. Not anymore. I scanned everything into PDFs, created 3 packets, each labeled with the name of a specific investor I knew Darren had defrauded. Then I crafted cover letters, formal, clear, emotionless. I have reason to believe you were misled regarding funds directed to the riverside, Oak Hollow, and Birchfield developments. No accusations, just evidence. By 5 Abdul A.M. The envelopes were sealed, addressed, and stacked neatly in my briefcase. I'd hand them to FedEx, UPS, and USPS-1 from each side of St. Paul. No patterns, no suspicion, just quiet, strategic movement. But that was only phase 1. Rachel still had a job. Meridian Brands. So I started calling around contacts I hadn't spoken to in years. Real estate people, financial analysts, even an old friend who now worked in HR compliance. By the end of Monday, I had what I needed. Rachel had been using her company card for personal expenses, $300 here, $400 there. Lunches that weren't business, gift receipts that didn't match client records. Worse, she'd been seen using the company's leased vehicle to tour private homes on weekends. Minor things. But in the right hands, it would unravel her career. On Tuesday morning, I drove 15 minutes to an old payphone outside a gas station on 7th Street, dialed Meridian's HR line, changed my voice, spoke slowly, clearly. I'd like to report internal resource misuse. I'd prefer to stay anonymous. Yeah. I gave dates, details, department names. The kind of information no outsider should know. Enough to start an internal investigation. Enough to make her nervous. By the end of Tuesday, my home office looked like a command center. Timelines taped to the wall. A calendar with circled deadlines. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was directing, because Rachel and Darren tried to strip away my name, my company, and my dignity. But they'd forgotten something important. I didn't build a real estate empire by being nice. I built it by being thorough. And I was just getting started. They showed up on Thursday afternoon. Didn't knock. Didn't wait. Rachel burst in first. Mascara streaked, voice trembling with rage. Darren followed, jaw clenched, shirt half untucked like he hadn't slept. "You ruined our lives," she shouted, standing in the middle of my living room like she still owned something here. Darren was more direct. You went behind our backs. You sabotaged us. I folded the newspaper in my lap and looked at them calmly. I don't know what you're talking about. The investors, Rachel snapped. The HR investigation. You think we can't trace this back to you? You're paranoid, I replied, echoing her own words from a few days ago. Darren stepped forward. You'll regret this. We'll sue. With what money? I asked. You just filed for bankruptcy. He froze. Rachel's voice cracked. You'll never see Eli again. We're cutting you off completely. I stood slowly. Not angry, just done. I built this house with my own hands. I built my company from the ground up, and I protected both from people who thought they could take without consequence. I pointed toward the door. The exit is still right there. They didn't move for a few seconds, just stood there, blinking, furious, and powerless. Then Darren grabbed Rachel's arm and pulled her toward the door. She turned back once. But I didn't. I'd already reclaimed what mattered. And they had no idea who they were dealing with. 1 week later, I sat in my office, sipping black coffee, watching the morning sun crawl across the windowsill. The Chicago Business Journal. Headline stared back at me from my laptop screen. Mitchell, development under fraud investigation. Assets frozen, pending review. There it was, in clean, clinical print. The quiet storm I had started, now made public. 3 major investors had filed formal complaints. Darren's accounts were locked, and Rachel, she'd been terminated from Meridian Brands. An internal investigation had confirmed every detail I'd reported: unauthorized spending, vehicle misuse, falsified timesheets. The reckoning had arrived, and not once did I raise my voice. Not once did I lose control. I simply revealed the truth. At 2:00 that afternoon, I got a text. Can we talk? They don't know I'm texting. Eli. We met at our usual spot in the park. He rode his bike and chained it to the old oak tree, the same one he used to climb as a kid. He looked different now. Older, quieter. Everything's falling apart, he said. Sitting beside me on the bench. Mom cries every night. Dad screaming at people on the phone. He stared down at his hands. They say it's all your fault. I let the silence stretch before I answered. What do you think? He didn't hesitate. I think they tried to take something that wasn't theirs, and you stopped them. I nodded slowly. Sometimes, Eli, adults make choices that break things, and they don't realize the damage until it's too late. Will they be okay? Eventually, I said. They'll learn to live within their means. Hopefully. He looked up. Can I still see you? I turned to him. Nothing will ever stop that. You're the only part of this family that still knows what integrity looks like. He hugged me, then quick, strong, real, and just like that, the noise fell away. The lies, the betrayal, the silence of Clara's absence, all of it, because in that moment, I knew I hadn't just protected a company. I'd protected a legacy. As I walked home through the quiet neighborhood, I passed Margaret Thompson tending her roses. She waved. I smiled. The air smelled like spring, like starting over. Inside my house, everything was in its place. The photos were still on the fridge. Clara's reading glasses were still in the drawer. My life, unchanged on the outside, but inside, everything had shifted. I wasn't angry anymore, just clear. Rachel and Darren thought they could win by being louder, more manipulative, more desperate, but they forgot what silence can do. Silence, plans, silence document. Silence outlasts. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever had to draw a line between love and self-respect, leave a comment. I'd like to hear from you. And if you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe. Because sometimes the quietest revenge is simply surviving with your dignity intact.